All right, welcome back. Next, we're talking about making our layouts responsive with the grid system. So if we go back to the documentation, we saw how to do equal with rows. Now we're talking about how we do these responsive classes. And we use the same breakpoint terminology, small, medium, extra large, large, that we saw in some of the other utilities. Here's a little chart that explains, the different breakpoints, where they take effect, and then the syntax that you need to use. So what we can do is take any of those numbers that we worked with, the 12 units, and divide them up at the different breakpoints. So we can say from small and larger, one column should take up 8 units. From medium and larger, that same column should take up 10 units. It's up to us to divvy it up. So let's just play around with it first. I have a new document, and I need a container. One thing I didn't note in the last video, you do have to use a container, but your container doesn't have to just be the standard one. Remember, there's also a fluid container that can go all the way across your page. It looks like this, container-fluid, but you have to use a container. Okay, so let's do our row, which we have to have. So let's say that I want to make 3 boxes going across the screen, and I don't want them to be even width. I want one in the middle to be larger. So we'll do .column, and this first one I want to take up, what do we want to take up? Let's say 3, and I want to let's just duplicate that. And then this middle one will be 6. Okay, so I gave a border and a height to our row, and then I'm going to give a background color to each one. There we go. So I gave them a background color, and this is what we saw in the last video. They take up the same proportion no matter what. So let's say that I want this green bar here, I want this to grow at, let's say, at extra large. I want it to take up more space. So to do that, I can use the classes column dash extra large dash and then a number. So if I need this green one to take up more space, right now it's at 6. Let's say I want it to go to 8, which means I need to shrink each of these down to be 2 if I'm trying to use the 12 units, if that makes sense. So we have 6, 3, and 3, that gives us 12. But if I'm switching this now at extra large to be 2 and 2, that's 4, so I have 8 leftover units. So then I need to do column extra large 8. And if we test it out, you can see right there, it's honestly not that big of a difference. So why don't I exaggerate it more? Let's make this 10, and each one of these 1. And save. Okay, so now once I hit extra large, there we go. It's a much larger difference. Okay. Now we're still, this is maybe not the most common thing to do. Usually you will care about the other direction, where you want things to stack on extra small or small. So what we would do instead, I'm going to duplicate this, and to get that effect, we can delete everything from here and just start with them like this, which doesn't give us anything. And remember that there's never any extra small sizes. So we don't say column extra small 12 or something. All that we do is give the small size and up, or the medium size and up, and the default is extra small. The default is that it will take up an entire row. So let me show you what I mean. I'm just going to do column small dash, let's say this one is going to be, let's just do even. So it's going to be 4. And I'm going to give them all column small dash 4. So they all take up 4 units out of 12, but then we get to extra small, and they all go horizontal all the way across. And I could definitely change this too. I could say this one is 2, this one is 6. And now if we look right here, there we go. 2, 6, and 4 units. And if instead I think this is too cramped, I want them only to expand at medium, I could change that. And now they're stacked, and they're stacked until I hit medium, at which point it expands. So let's do a quick demo without boxes. I'll come down, let's do an H1 that just says demo. And I'll do a super simple demo with a row. We'll have just 2 columns. And this first one, I'm going to add an H1 into and just say blog post. And below that, we'll have a paragraph. I'm going to do the same thing with lorem. Let's say 100 this time, and save. And then I'm going to do another column that will be our sidebar again, just like we had from before. And in this column, I'll just copy a nav. Okay, so I put in some links instead of a nav. And right now I just have column on both of them, which remember that always divides the space evenly. And that's not how I want this to work. Let's say that I'm trying to roughly recreate this again. So I want this to take up a lot more space. So we could just play around right now with that and say, I want this blog post to take maybe 9, and this will take 3. And that looks pretty close to what we have over here. We don't have to get it spot on. But the problem is I don't want it to stay like this the entire way through. So at some point, I want things to switch over. So when we get to, let's say medium, I think is where it makes sense to have them stack. Maybe small. I think medium though. I want this to go below. So instead, I can just say column medium 9, column medium 3. So now this stacks, and we can address how to space it and everything. But then here, in just a moment, there we go. Now we get the correct spacing that we would probably want. And, we could spice it up a little bit. Just give them each a border, rounded, and maybe give this one BG light to make our sidebar. And I actually don't like the border on it, so let's get rid of that. Okay, so then we end up with something that looks like this, and that's good enough. And down here it switches down below. If you don't like this layout, of course, we could change it to be a column. So I could give it flex column, which is very different than this column class up there. If you prefer to have it look like that, totally optional. I think I'm just going to leave it like this. Basic enough. We're not trying to build something amazing. But now you can see that we have this responsive layout. This is taking up a large percentage. What did we do? 9 out of 12. And then as we shrink it down, we get to this size, and then they stack. And you could change that by changing this breakpoint. So now if we do small, they share the space until we get to extra small. But I think that's a little cramped right there personally. So I would do medium. And there we go. So that's the responsive classes for the grid. You can mix and match them. I'd say most frequently you're having something stack at extra small and then expand at small or medium, but you can have things change all over the place as your grid grows, or as the window size grows. There's a lot more space, and you might want things to hide or appear or disappear. So you could use the display utilities that we talked about too.